My friends, this is Fill in the Blanks, and you need to listen to me. The last week of November and the first week of December saw me spend 2 weeks in Havana and Cienfuegos. It frequently surprises people to find out I'm not in Cuba as often or for as long as I'd like to be. So, it was a jam-packed itinerary, some great things that were planned, some greater things that happened that I wasn't expecting. First, the planned. I got to see 6 Cuban National Series games. 4 in Havana and 2 in Cienfuegos. It was great to see resurgent crowds at Latino Americano, especially after they've finished their new renovations for the 500th anniversary of Havana. There was definitely a buzz back in the stadium that's been missing from the past couple of trips. Also helps that Industriales was getting hot at the right time. In fact, they finished the season 9-1, and as I mentioned in my playoff preview, are going in tied with 3 other squads and only 1 game behind first place Camagüey, who they will face in the first round of the playoffs. So many people are predicting they may even take that best of 5, but with the teams that closely bunched, it's going to come down to who executes. With that in mind, the one thing that I did notice that Industriales can definitely tighten up, they made quite a few base running mistakes. Maybe it was out of eagerness because they were so close to the playoffs. They were on the bubble at that point, and as I said, got hot and ended up cementing that spot. 3 players I'm going to keep my eye on for Industriales are Frederick Cepeda, to see if he can continue his hot hitting, finishing 2nd in home runs in the league. Yordany Simon, whose .413 average just failed to qualify due to a lack of at-bats. And Frank Camilo Morillon, a gentleman that I'm proud to call a friend and got to spend some great time with in Havana. So, if those 3 veteran bats can catch fire and they can get just enough pitching, I have the feeling that Industriales can go a long way and do a lot of damage. Again, the winner of the 59th Cuban Series not only gets to hoist that trophy, but the predominant members of those teams, with a few reinforcements, will go on to Puerto Rico in the first week of February to represent Cuba in the Caribbean Series. My time in Havana also saw me forge some great new relationships, a couple that I wasn't expecting. So, one day sitting at the pool bar, I saw a gentleman come in wearing a Chinese Taipei baseball hat. Figured that must be a present from one of the players. That's not really a souvenir that the average person would have. He was talking to the bartender and noticed that a few English words snuck in, so I kind of interjected myself into the conversation. Got to find out that Freddie Cesar Romero, an older gentleman, had pitched in the Cuban National Series for La Habana in the 60s and the 70s. I introduced you to him in one of the interviews that I did that I have posted to the page. You can check that out and learn a little bit more about his story. Cienfuegos, as I've mentioned in the past, was my gateway to Cuban baseball. And even though I've spent more time in Havana over the years, it was great to see the Elefantes finally playing meaningful games in December again. And to get back to 5th of September Stadium and to see an electric crowd, pretty close to the ones that I saw when I first went to Cienfuegos back in 2012. Cool happening while I was there. I did get to cross paths with Pitu Abreu, who was there on vacation. He was very respectful when I talked to him, and especially I can understand how you might be put off with a gringo putting a camera in your face, but got to chat with him briefly. If he does see this, just want to say I understand he's doing great things both in the community in Chicago and in Cienfuegos, on top of being a stellar player. Just signed a new contract with the Chicago White Sox. Obviously is acting as a mentor for the young pipeline of players, Yoan Moncada, Luis Robert, and the White Sox just signed a couple other players in Yasmani Grandal, who was born in Cuba, and in Gio Gonzalez, who is of Cuban descent. So the White Sox, who perhaps have had the longest historical relationship with Cuba and with Cuban players, continue to build that pipeline. So great to see Jose Abreu act as a mentor, which kind of undersells the fact that he just led the American League in RBIs at 123. So as much as he's a veteran player, the relying on that. He still has a lot in the tank, and I'm intrigued to see how that plays out for the Medias Blancos in 2020. Got to stay at the casa once again of Olympic gold medalist, pitcher for Cuba in the World Baseball Classic, and perhaps the greatest pitcher in the history of the Cienfuegos Elefantes in Norberto Gonzalez. Norberto, his wife Dismy, and their lovely family have a beautiful casa that is close to 5th of September Stadium and available for rent. I've put together a short video highlighting that, and for anyone that is visiting the Cienfuegos and looking for a great place to stay, a great experience that's close to everything that Cienfuegos has to offer, either get in touch with me or drop them a line and see if they have availability incredibly affordably. As we head into the playoffs, I'll be intrigued to see how it plays out. As I said, it's jam-packed. All 4 teams finished within 1 game of another. While I was in Cuba, frequently people ask me what my favorite team is. I try not to pick favorites, as over time I've actually come to know quite a few players around the league. Again, some of them I can consider friends, some acquaintances. There's definitely a soft spot in my heart, both for Cienfuegos, because it was the first place that I ever saw Cuban baseball in, and was so great to now see, even though they missed the playoffs, for them to make the second phase and to see baseball kind of have a little bit of a resurgence in the Pearl of the South. Also, you know, I won't lie, I would love to see Industriales do some damage, again, because many of the players have become friends, but what I'm really looking forward to is what appears to be a very competitive playoffs. So, in the comments section, or Twitter, Instagram, all of my platforms, I want to hear who you think is going to eventually hoist the trophy in the 59th Cuban National Series playoffs and go on to represent Cuba in the Caribbean Series.